And welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic. I am Shane, and this is
Andrew.
And we are two wizards, or we're old farts that just like to talk about D&D. So there you go. And of course, don't forget, brought to you by Cawood Publishing, purveyors of fine D&D related stuff that you can buy all over the place online. And but first, before we get into what we're talking about today, Andrew would like to make an announcement.
Yes, our newest book, the fourth book in our monster series, this guy, Monsters of the Wilderness, is now available at our website, worldofmere.com. You can get the PDF from our website. The links are below. You can also get a print-on-demand version, softcover or hardcover, and the PDF at drive-thru, and we'll have those links below as well. This is the largest book we've done, 160 pages, over 120 monsters, divided into 7 different regions like the ocean, mountains, etc. So you could use it as a regular monster book by just choosing monsters, or you could use it as a campaign book with adventures in the wilderness. And it also has a collection of magic items in here, and lots of encounters, adventure hooks, game master advice, and as I said, the most complete book we've done yet, and the fourth book in the series so far. So now we have over 400 monsters that your players would never have seen before, and you can surprise them.
I mean, just look how sexy that cover is. Look at that thing. That is just the most amazing cover. It's actually a lot busier than the previous covers. Like the other covers sort of featured like a singular creature, but this one's like got a mishmash of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of color, and we're going to do that more. This book overall has more color, and the next book we're going to announce probably next week, but very soon for the Kickstarter this year, we'll have even more color. And we want to have more color. We want to have more creativity, more stranger creatures that are definitely unique. So that's what we did with this book, and that's what we'll keep trying to do.
Nice. That kicks ass. Well, I'm excited because I know I'm going to get mine soon, which will be great.
Yeah, I should say quickly, another announcement for the Kickstarter, that those backers got their PDFs a long time ago before Christmas. However, their printed books, the UK backers, most of them should have them now. There's a few more people that the books are on their way. The other books are going to arrive here at this office probably tomorrow, and then we'll start shipping those around North America and Europe and to Shane's house.
I picture you sitting by your door, like just doing this, like, they said it was out for delivery. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming.
But, yeah, especially today when it's sunny, because it's almost never sunny here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm just waiting.
Well, at the end of the day, it's a great book, and I think people will enjoy it. And it will bring us billions of dollars, billions upon billions. I wish. But anyway, this week, we're talking about fighters, which I think I said to you last week that fighters were not my favorite class at all. Like, I rarely played them. Mm-hmm. But they're the most iconic. That's the weird thing, is that they are, if you have not played a fighter, it's surprising. I have played fighters in the past, but I pick something else, usually just because of, I'm weird. But yeah, fighters this week, today.
Fighters, yeah, like you say, it is one of the most iconic parts of fantasy. It is the archetypal warrior. They have quite a range, though, as the player's handbook, the 5e handbook points out very correctly. You have a real big range. I mean, a fighter could be, it could be a knight. It could be, a lawful good knight, almost like a paladin. They could be some sort of smuggler or bandit type. They could be a guard in the city, usually an officer if they're a fighter. They could be kind of out more in the wilderness, a bit like a ranger or like a barbarian. You've got a huge range, and then their weapon skills and the kind of armor they use have as big a range, I think, as any class there is. They've been there from the beginning of D&D. So you get really good hit points to start, which is basically your health in video game language. And you start with 10 hit points, and your hit dice is 1d10, which is really good, because like a wizard is 1d6, which is not great. You're proficient in all armor. You're proficient using shields, simple and martial weapons. So simple weapons are things like clubs and daggers, very straightforward kind of weapons. Martial are the more advanced swords and you need more training, like pikes and halberds and that kind of weapon, warhammers. So you also have a variety of skills you can choose from: acrobatics, animal handling, athletics, history, insight, intimidation, perception, or survival. So you've got a big range there. I think having history there is an interesting one. I wouldn't really think of a fighter with a big focus around history, or even insight to a certain degree. The other ones I think are more traditional.
Well, I mean, you have those sorts of fighters where, like, I'm thinking about it right now, and sort of what are the archetypal sort of fighters you have, and I of course, you go straight to Lord of the Rings, and you look at Aragorn, and you kind of think, oh, he's a fighter, and then, well, but he's really proficient in archery and stuff like that, and he's also referred to as a ranger. But is he really a ranger? He's kind of, he's almost like a multi-class kind of character, but he definitely has that ability to really delve into the sort of the history of things, and also into being. I kind of think of athletics as not being a fighter trait, but it must be, because I'm going to swing my sword 320 times today, and after oh, that was number 10. Okay, excuse me, monster. I need to take a break. That kind of thing. So you have to have these kinds of skills to really be a successful fighter, I would think. But yeah, you don't. Yeah. They're not the first things that pop into your mind. You think of right away like armor and ability to swing a sword. So
yeah, you do make a good point, though. It reminds me of the hero in our Monsters of the Underworld book, a monster hunter who is a ranger as well. But rangers and fighters, like you say, they're not really that far apart. And that character does a lot of research about monsters before he goes out and hunts them. Somewhat similar to The Witcher. There's definitely a cross.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, because he's got all that knowledge about, oh, I need to do this thing, and that particular creature is vulnerable to that thing, and I need to make sure that when I'm going to kill that thing, that I have prepared these 5 things first. Like, there's all of that sort of thinking that goes into how The Witcher, at least in my mind, sort of survives. But
exactly. The only difference with our character Desmond, who's in that book, and you can also find the subclass for a monster, our version of the monster hunter in there. He is much older. He's like in his early 50s. He's like my age. So, which is quite old, would be quite old in a medieval type world. Would be very,
oh God, yeah,
unusually old. But anyway, it's still possible. So another aspect of the fighter is that you can choose a fighting style. Now, for me, I almost always choose defense, because having a bonus to your armor class is such a big, it's such a useful feature. And then secondly, the archery +2 to your attack rolls, that's really big. The other ones like dueling, great weapon fighting, protection, 2-weapon fighting, I don't find that many people use those ones in our groups that much. And I definitely haven't used them too often.
Well, I tend to gravitate towards 2-weapon because I always associate it with having 2 attacks, which is not true. But that's kind of how I think about it, where if I was able to like duel like 2 weapons that are not the same, that I could say I could have an axe in one hand that might have a higher damage rate or a greater chance to hit or whatever. That kind of thing, that's kind of where I sort of lead. But now that I'm seeing these again, I'm like, yeah, because actually I do almost unconsciously, I'm like, It'd be cool if I could use a bow and arrow at distance, because that way I'm not like right up in the face. I'm not that kind of fighter, you know. That's the barbarian's job. Let them get in there. But
Right.
because I don't
Yeah,
think
I
of
like
fighters as
archery quite a
tanks,
bit
really.
too.
I
Yeah,
always think of them as kind of like, you know, they're sort of like a utility class. Like they're able to do like a whole bunch of different things,
yeah,
and if you make them so they can adapt, uh, that kind of has a benefit, because hopefully you'll have a barbarian tank in your group.
yeah.
You might have some wizards that will hang back and fire from afar, but you know, having that ability to dive in and like, I'm gonna stab you and poke you, and then I'm gonna turn around, run that way, and then I'm gonna just fire arrows at you until you die. Like that's actually not a. I want to play a fighter now.
Yeah, there's a big range. And again, like you say, it does actually depend about your party, because if you're with, for example, like you said, a wizard and a rogue and maybe a druid, you're now the tank. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. That and
Um,
being
but
flexible. I mean, holy cow.
yeah, and well, the two-weapon fighting does mean that you can have a weapon in each hand. What it means is that instead of your second attack not including your modifier to the damage, you can include it. So it is useful. The great weapon fighting too, like re-rolling a 1 or a 2, that's pretty good too.
Yeah, true.
Um, Other features, general features for the fighter, are the second wind to regain hit points. That's a very, very useful one. One that's used all the time is action surge to get another attack. Both of those you have to rest to reuse them. Then you get extra attacks at 5th, 11th, and 20th level. Woohoo, I've got 20th level. Now I've got 4 attacks.
I will decimate you.
Yeah. And then Indomitable. So you can re-roll a saving throw, which is pretty powerful. Like that's what
That makes a huge
legendary
difference.
resistance is to a certain degree.
Oh gosh, yeah. Unreal.
So we're not going to look at all of the subclasses because a lot have been added in many books that have been put out. But the basic 3 are the champion, the battle master, and the Eldridge Knight. And I'd say from what I've seen, 80% of people probably choose the champion because it's a basic. The champion is a very simple version of the fighter.
Yeah. Especially when you have like, if you roll an 18, that counts as like a crit. And
Yeah, that's a really
that
big
becomes
one.
helpful.
Well, it's 19 or 20 at lower levels, and then higher levels it gets to be 18 to 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
As well, you can add your proficiency to some checks and have a really good long jump. That's strangely specific. And much higher levels, you can actually regain hit points at the start of your turn. So that's the champion. Very easy to play, straightforward, and a good one to use for an NPC. I use fighters as NPCs all the time because for me, a traditional fantasy setting, that is going to be the most common class that the party will run into. So I often have them as henchmen or guard captains, that kind of thing. I have, in the adventures we've played for the last, I think we played for 6 years with the West of the Wood group now.
Yeah.
6 or 7 years. You've definitely met fighters as NPCs more than any other class, and 95% of them have been champions.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the Battle Master, I don't recall ever having played a Battle Master like in the entire history of me ever playing. I know I've played Eldritch Knights a few times, and that's been okay. But that's really only because I wanted to use Eldritch Blast. It's pretty much, I want to be able to do something at a distance, and that was kind of it. But never, by the way, children, never a good choice to pick one thing out of a particular class and select your character because of that one thing. Don't do it. But yeah, I mean, it's really the fact for the Eldritch Knight, I think, because you have a few spells, and I think that's why that becomes very popular. But Battle Masters, yeah, I don't recall anyone ever playing it.
Yeah, I don't
Especially
think
in this
anybody
group.
in any of the groups that I've run for the last 6, 7 years for all of 5th edition has chosen one. It's more complicated. You have special maneuvers you can do. You can actually, as we were talking about before, this is the kind of fighter who studies and observes their opponents at a distance before they fight. And then, yeah, it's much more complicated. These special, it's kind of like a monk in some ways, that it has these extra maneuvers that it can do, and you use superiority dice to be able to use those.
Yeah.
The Eldridge Knight, I think I'd really like to play that. It's a lot of fun. It's the one class or the one subclass or fighters that includes magic. We've had a few people play that in our party. So you get wizard spells. You have a weapon bond feature where you can summon your weapon. That's very cool. You have a lot of features as you get to higher levels where you can use magic and fight in the same turn.
Right.
And yeah, and you can give disadvantage with your Eldritch Strike to a creature that you've when you cast a spell against them. And yeah, and then the arcane charge, you can actually teleport 30 feet using your action surge. So you can gain that extra action and then move around again. It's and you don't get any there's no opportunity attacks with teleporting or misty step, so you wouldn't even have to worry about those. So yeah, I think that's a really great one.
Actually,
Overall, I'd
I
say,
don't think I've ever used that. Even when I've played Eldritch Knights, I don't think I've ever used that skill.
oh really?
That's actually really cool. That's actually very cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. So the pros overall, very simple and clear. You know, not as simple maybe as a barbarian, where you're pretty much, you know, at the front of the action and hitting every time with your weapon, but not too, but not that complicated. Like you said, you could use range weapons, you can use melee weapons. It's, you know, very traditional class. Definitely a class that is a good one to start off with if you're learning D&D.
Yeah.
It's a great one to learn to do. If you want to give a companion to one of the player characters, or a henchman to your big bad evil guy, they're so easy to run. Like when I'm running a fighter, I usually don't even look in the player's handbook, because it's so straightforward. At low levels, it's so straightforward. Once you're over 15th level, then you get 14th, 15th level, then you get a bit more, there's some more nuance to it. But overall, it's a very clean, especially with such an efficient system like 5th edition. It's so easy to play. Like a kid could play this class. A 5-year-old could play this.
That's true. That's true. I mean, you're right. I mean, I like reviewing this stuff with you, because then I can actually, all this stuff comes flooding back about how badly I've played a class or how badly so it does actually kind of make me want to like create another character that is a fighter specifically, that's very, very basic in the very beginning. And because one of the things I'm really finding over the last, say, I don't know, 6 months, maybe the last year or so, is how thinking about how this game actually works and how you can make it really good, and make it fun for everybody. That's the key thing, to make it fun. Yep. Is that it kind of re-energizes you a bit to actually not just play the game, but then sit back and go, okay, well, let me open up that book and okay, oh yeah, there's that feature of that thing. Oh, okay, well, how can I use that? It actually gets your sort of creative juices flowing. And because fighters are so basic and are pretty much, as you said, if you're going to start playing, play a fighter first, because there's no, like, I've seen people multi-class and build like these complex characters, and it's like, I'm going to roll the dice now. Let me get my notes. Flip, 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 flip. Okay, I've got 75% increase hit rate, blah, blah, blah. Like, and they just go on and on about the math, and it's like, because that's not what's fun about the game. I guess it's okay, but it's not my primary sort of thing. It's like, I want to know about stories and things and what kind of cool things, because playing the game, there's always that moment where something happens and you sit there and go, that would make a really great poster. You know, like a character has done this thing, and it's like, how did they come up with that? That's so cool. Then you sort of picture this sort of creature being attacked or being climbed over, or a
Right.
wall caving in, or the floor exploding in beer, like those kinds of things. You just have these little snapshots in your mind that sort of keep you going back, and it reinvigorates, I think is the badly chosen word. But anyway, but yeah, it's cool. I gotta say. Anyway, sorry. I'm kind of
Yeah.
being all excited about fighters now.
No, it's so true. And why don't you tell everyone what your druid was doing to the fire giants in our game on the weekend?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, which part? The climbing on their faces and biting on their
Yeah.
face again? Every player has a thing that they like to do because they think it's funny, or maybe they're tired. They can't think of anything else. But definitely my default mode for characters that can climb, not every character, but is to climb on their face and bite them. And when you have a character that has a particular trait or a spell or something they can use, why not? And I definitely did that a lot. And there's probably some images out there maybe that I think we've suggested should be done, and I think at least 2 or 3 of them of a character of mine like biting on somebody's face or scaling up. And like one of the things I've always wanted to do is like get on top of a creature and grab its hair and sort of ratatouille it. Like
Right.
we're gonna go walk this way, by pulling its hair. It's like, ah,
Right.
That would be kind of amusing to me. I think it would be
Yeah.
impractical, but still.
Yeah, you definitely you're definitely fond of trying to get on top of creatures. I think one time it didn't work very well.
Oh, it's not
I
worked a
think
few
this was
times.
you because you decided to climb onto a rock, jump onto a rock that was attacking this enormous bird creature,
Yep.
and it went up into the sky, and you were still attacking it, and the party was attacking it from below, and then it died, but it was about 90 feet in the air, 100 feet in the air, and you were still on it, and then it just dropped right into the ground.
Yeah, I do remember that. I
Yeah.
remember you going, oh, and then dice started rolling. It's like, uh-oh, what's going to happen?
I think somehow you survived actually.
I don't recall specifically, but yeah, I did survive
yeah, I think
that.
you still like
particular-
you I think you
it
were
wasn't
badly
pretty.
injured, but you got healed by the party.
Yeah, I mean
think
that
you
was
were
a luck
definitely
thing.
unconscious.
Yeah,
Because
and
you
I think
fell a long
I
way
think I
and a
broke
rock
something
fell
as
on
well.
top of you.
Oh, that's
Pretty
right.
much, I think. I think it like rolled over and then fell on top of you. So yeah, there are many things that you can do with the classes, and one really good thing about having such a smooth system like 5e and a simple class like the fighter is you really can concentrate on your character, who they are, what are their faults, what are their general traits, what are the things they're good at. You can really dig into that, because when it comes to exploring or combat, it's so simple and easy and quick. So the Eldridge Knight, yeah, we pretty much went over that. Cons, in one way, some people find fighters too simple. That's why they go towards paladins, which is kind of more my style, or rangers also I like quite a bit, or barbarian. So some people find them just too basic.
Yeah.
But I think that's really in how you play it. I don't think they have to be that. I don't think it has to be
Well,
like that.
exactly. I mean, it's like you and I talked about on this program before, is that there's definitely some um there's traits about the game that are rules / guidelines, and then
Yeah.
you can add to that by doing something different. I mean, initially that's what climbing on a creature was about. I think for me was everyone is slashing away or hurling spells or whatever, and then I thought, well, I kind of, one of the things that I like about it is that you can actually get into the scrum. You can actually the creature we're attacking is 30 feet high. Why not climb up to its kneecap and stab it repeatedly in the kneecap? Because maybe a roll will happen that's so spectacular that the person running the game can be like, you know what, you cut his leg off below the knee. Like stuff like that can happen. But if
Well,
you don't try to make that kind of stuff happen because
yeah.
you're trying to be inventive, it kind of it's like you're throwing out these little offers to people, like the DMs over there. And you got these other players, and you're throwing out, you're grabbing things they're offering,
Yeah.
and if you completely ignore them and focus entirely on what the math is doing for your particular
Mhm.
character, then I don't know. I find that kind of boring. It's like, hey, I'm going to set fire. Oh, hey, I'm going to cast Wall of Thrones. I did that again.
You did it
Wall
again.
of Thorns right in front of between us and the villains,
Yeah.
and make them work for it a little bit, because I did it again on the weekend because we were getting just pummeled,
Right.
and to the point where you're starting to think, yeah, one of us is going to die. Like, there's going to be a character dropping permanently.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know if the party was going to make it through that. Yeah, it's a good point. I think what you're talking really about, I think, is an improv style of where you always, the answer is always yes. And I think that is a lot of fun. And there are some dungeon masters and there's some parties like that. I don't think you have to play like that, but that's one way of really adding a lot of energy to the game.
Yeah.
Tactically, it actually makes a lot of sense if you have a really large creature, or if there's a few large creatures, to actually get really close, because then maybe the others will, you might be shielded. Like in this case, there were a number of fire giants. So you were actually shielded from the other fire giants because you were you were on the other side of one of them. So tactically, it actually can make sense to do it, as well. And we talked about my original character when I started playing D&D when I was like 9 or 10. I chose a fighter and I played him for quite a while. I had him because he went, I think he went to 20th level eventually. And yeah, he was just a straightforward fighter, and very
I do
straightforward.
have I do have a hardcover book somewhere. It's probably at my parents' house, but I every so often I'll look for it because I know I'm hoping it hasn't been thrown away, but it's on a bookshelf
Mhm.
somewhere, and it actually has my original characters from back then. And I really want to find it, but every so
Wow.
often I'll look, and I'm not unsuccessful. But yeah, like that's, but all of them were fighters except for I think one wizard at one point, and then there was also the multi-classing, because I remember getting a book that I still have here called Rogue's Gallery,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and that's, I think that was AD&D, or
yep.
maybe, yeah,
AD&D. Yeah, I think so.
and that's where multi-classing was introduced to me anyway, and I was
Mhm.
like looking at these pre-rolled characters going, oh, you could be a fighter and a this, that, and the other thing.
Mhm,
Which, of
mhm.
course, the game's evolved to have subclasses and things like that to actually sort of cover a lot of that. But yeah, yeah, every single character are pretty much fighters, or start off as fighters
Wow.
anyway.
Well, you
But yeah,
played a fighter in the one Forgotten Realms that I wasn't our guest DM Jay did. I was actually a player with
wait, I was a fighter? Oh
my
yeah, the halfling fighter.
yeah, when I was a paladin, you were a halfling fighter, and one of the
I think
other characters was like your
I was like a
uh
promoter, like
yeah,
like a
he was
you
like a
know, come
fighter
on
or a
down to the death
mentor.
match tonight, and
Yeah,
so is going to be up against his greatest foe
yeah,
ever. That, yeah, exactly. Because I think I actually made that character reasonably old. Like I said, he was like 45 or something.
yeah, yeah,
Although that's
yeah.
kind of young for a halfling. It might have been a bit older because it was a halfling, but still,
Halflings don't live that old. Um,
I thought they lived to like, wasn't it? We just talked about this the other day, and I've totally forgotten already.
I don't know
But
if we actually mentioned the halfling age because it's not as long. They don't live as long as many of the other demi-humans.
right,
So they live. Oh yeah, well till the middle of their second century. That's right. If you think about Bilbo, he was having his what 111th birthday, I think.
yeah,
So yeah, 45. Well, when are they adults? They're adults when they're 20. So
yeah.
yeah, they're still younger than gnomes, half as young as dwarves, and like, a third or a quarter of the life of an elf.
I mean, anything older than a human. I mean, come on. That
Yeah.
just gives you all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah, yeah, that does. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so
yeah.
definitely a very, like I said, straightforward, clear choice. A great one for kids to play or new players.
Yeah, especially new players.
Hmm.
I mean, I mean, fighters, and then probably you'd move on to like wizards, and then maybe. But is that a good idea? Because I guess I don't know. That's
I'd say
actually kind of
wizard is one of the hardest because
yeah.
I think all the spellcasters are more complicated, um, especially sorcerers with their sorcery points. And there's a lot going on with warlocks. Yeah, I think they're not as efficient in general.
Yeah.
The wizard, the wizard, it depends how you play it. Clerics are not as, I think clerics are another fairly straightforward one. Rogues, you have a lot going on, but once you get used to it, it's quite easy. Monks with their Kai points, they're not as straightforward, but you can learn it quick. You can learn it. So I think fighter and then maybe cleric is fairly straightforward. Yeah, bard is a bit more complicated because you can do almost anything with a bard.
Oh, I don't think.
You can
Again,
heal.
that's another class I don't think I've played that often.
Yeah, there's so many things you can do if you want to be a jack of all trades, which happens to be part of that class. Um, a bard is, if you can fight, you can heal, you can do other spells, you can do really unique things that nobody else can. There's a lot of flavor you could add in terms of the backstory for a character like that, right? We talked about the halfling in our party who took his wife on the adventure. She died, and then he changed focus and became like this Batman kind of character out for revenge.
That's awesome.
He was like this light, happy-go-lucky halfling, and then he just got to be this dark, like brooding character.
Okay, that is totally the best.
I don't know if did you play with him? That was Thumps.
No,
The
that was
halfling.
before I started. That was before I started.
Oh,
But I've
okay.
heard many stories about that.
Right. I forgot you missed that entire first campaign from first to 20th.
Yeah.
Um, but we were just learning, that was the beginning of 5th edition. We were just learning as we were going along. So you probably missed a lot of time where players were sitting there going, I don't know what I'm going to do. Let me just check for.
Let me check the book again. This is not like it was really hard in the 4th edition.
Yeah, because now a lot of most of our group have played for quite a while.
It's been God, it has been a long. I want cake now. We need to celebrate with a cake.
We used to do that every year. So yeah, I even thought
And
of
then
sending you
COVID
guys
came.
during the lockdowns. I even thought about sending cake to you.
Little cupcakes showing up at the door.
Yeah, a little
Has
candle on it.
D&D anniversary on it.
Yeah, one candle.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
no note, just like a little cupcake with a candle at your door.
People getting all paranoid looking outside.
Well, that reminds me, like I sent this Christmas present last year to my cousin overseas, but I forgot to. I ordered it over from a store over there in the UK, and I forgot to include a note or anything. They had this gift arrive, and for months they were like, "Who sent that? That was so good," but we have no idea. So,
And then you just casually ask, "Oh, how was it?" And they're like, "It was you."
yeah,
You did.
months later, months later, I asked. So yeah.
Oh wow. I have so much fun here. So well, that's pretty much it for fighters.
Yeah.
Next week we're going to be talking about rangers, and which I used to think of as being a fighter just with a bow and arrow, but it's not. It's really different.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting class to talk about because there's been a lot of controversy in 5th edition. A lot of people at the beginning of when this edition came out would say that was the least liked class, or it had the most disappointment surrounding it. Some people didn't like the way that it's being built, the class is being built. And they've said, why don't I just be a fighter? If I use a fighter, I can actually be more of a ranger. And also there's a lot of magic where a real archetypal ranger doesn't have magic. And actually, in our new book, to come full circle, there are 2 player subclasses in here. Full circle as I turn it to the right way up. There's 2 player subclasses in here. One a druid class and one a ranger that has no magic. So that's the truest version of the ranger, although I'm biased. That there's no magic with this ranger, and it's more of a cross between a ranger and a rogue from 5th edition. So you're a very agile, quick-moving, warrior type in the wilderness. And that, I think, is more like the original ranger, like Aragorn, who you mentioned earlier. Yeah, and there have been a lot of, Legolas, maybe Aragorn is more of a fighter and Legolas is the ranger. Even though Aragorn is called a ranger.
The Ranger of the North. But maybe that was because, God, it is actually a hard
Rangers
choice.
They were like a specific type of specific group, I think, in that story, if I remember. Yeah. I have to reread it again.
The Anduin something. Insert some word like that here.
Yeah.
But there was a point. There was a whole history of where they came from, and
exactly. So, and they both might be rangers. 2 different kinds of rangers, right? So, but next week,
That's
rangers.
Right. Rangers next week, and don't forget, pick up your copy. There's places to get it, which will be in the description below. And look at how. But again, thank you, Andrew, for being here, and I'll see you next week, and we'll see you all next week, and hopefully you will start playing pretty soon. All right. Bye, everybody.